In this video, I'm going to show you how to make clean paint lines with tape, how to tan wash wood. I'm going to go into a deep dive on paint and also discuss some top coat options. If you want to skip to any one of those 4 points, you can check out the chapters. This is not necessary that you see another video before watching this, but it is part 3 in a series of how to turn a desk into nightstands. This will be the final video. I am happy to report this project had a lot of time and love spent on it, and I'm glad I did it. Now, about clean paint lines and how you get those. There are a few methods you can use to get clean paint lines. One is shellac or any clear top coat. One is the original color of paint, and then the last is caulk. If you want to use shellac, after you apply the tape, you paint a little bit of shellac where you don't want there to be other paint that's bleeding through. Where you want that crisp line is where you'll put the shellac. And once it dries, you can go in with the paint you were going to use. That dry time is what makes that such an appealing option. Another option is to paint with the original color. So that is to say, you're actually painting on that crisp line the color you don't want it to be, which sounds odd, but it's going to fill the little gaps in the tape just like that shellac would. Instead of being clear, it'll be the color of the paint on the other side of the tape. And thirdly, the option of caulk, paintable caulk. You can get a little bit and you will just use your finger to run it down the side of the tape that you want there to be that crisp line on, and it will disallow any of that paint from bleeding through on you. Before I talk about how you tan wash wood, I want to talk about some of the paint terminology, do a bit of a deep dive. We're going to talk about the variants to begin with. Primer is a coating that's put on materials before you apply the paint itself, and the primed surface ensures there's better adhesion of the paint, which increases the durability of the paint, and it provides improved protection for the painted surface. Suitable primers also can block or seal stains, or they can hide color that needs to be painted over. Within the realm of paints, emulsion paints are water-based paints where the paint material is dispersed in a liquid that consists mostly of water. For suitable purposes, it has an advantage in being something that dries very quickly, has low toxicity, low cost, and there's easier application and cleanup, which is what we want when we're painting furniture. Varnish and shellac are both, in effect, they are paints themselves that don't have pigments. They provide a protective coating without substantially changing the color of the surface, but they can emphasize the color of materials on the surface, giving them a deeper look. Wood stain is also considered a type of paint that's just made to be very thin, so it doesn't have a lot of viscosity, and the pigment soaks into a material like the wood rather than remaining as a film on the surface, and that will come into play when we talk about tan washing. That is essentially creating your own stain using paint. Now, I'll wait for that time when it comes, just a couple minutes from now. Lacquer is solvent-based paint or varnish, and it produces a very hard, durable finish, usually drying incredibly rapidly. We've talked about that in another video. It's very often used in manufacturing, less likely to be used in the home. The conditions that it needs are pretty specific. Then we have enamel paint, which is formulated to give you an especially hard and typically glossy finish. Some enamel paints have a fine glass powder. Here's a fireplace I took a picture of, and then I'm bragging about the legroom I have on the plane. So some enamel paints have fine glass powder or metal flake instead of color pigments that you would find in the standard oil-based paints. Enamel paint is sometimes mixed with varnish or with an earthing to improve the shine of it and to improve the hardness of it. And glaze is an additive used with paint to slow the dry time and increase the translucency, often used in faux painting or wood effects. The glaze is different from water for various reasons, but water is often what is used to slow dry time on paint and increase translucency. It does damage the ability of the paint to be durable, and so that needs to be taken into consideration, as with a tan wash, where it is not much of an issue because the stain there, or the paint there, becomes a stain, so it's soaking into the wood. Chalk paint is a decorative paint used for home decor and also for furniture. It's really great for making a shabby chic or vintage look on furniture because it's easily distressed on account of it's easy to sand. The reason it's easy to sand is because of the chalk that is in it, calcium carbonate. It's the same chalk that you used in school as a kid if you're over 40, and it's the same chalk you wrote on with sidewalks. It's the same chalk that's in Tums. It's calcium carbonate. Makes it adhere better, and it also helps with making sure you can sand it, which is, as I said, wonderful for shabby chic looks or distressed furniture. One disadvantage, it has to have a top coat because it's very porous on account of chalk is porous. And when you add it to the paint, that means that it's not going to have a built-in top coat possible for it. There are a lot of different finish types in paint for you to choose from. And in furniture, it is common for flat or matte finishes to be what is used, but it's really up to you what you want to use. Flat finish is usually used on ceilings or walls that are in bad shape because it's useful for hiding imperfections, and it's effective at covering large areas, but it's not an easily washable finish type, and so it's subject to staining. Matte finish is a lot like flat finish, but they usually are more easily washed and provide better coverage. Now, eggshell finish has a little bit of sheen. It's compared to the sheen that you find on an egg. A satin finish is something that has started coming up more in the furniture world as a more common finish. It's very durable and resists moisture well, and it does so better than eggshell finish, certainly better than a matte or a flat finish would. So it does those things, and that's where there's advantage, but it also means it's prone to show imperfections. The appearance of it is velvet, and it is really great for creating a kind of luxurious feel. And satin paint it's durable, it's easy to clean, it's great for high traffic areas. Kitchens and bathrooms are where you're going to see a lot of satin finishes on the walls or on cabinetry. The greatest disadvantage of a satin sheen for furniture refinishers is that it does not do a good job of hiding surface imperfections. It does not camouflage the issues. Light will bounce off of it well enough that you're going to see those imperfections. It means that if it's becoming on trend, as we see, we're going to have to account for that issue in one way or another. One of the ways we can account for it is with faux wood-like finishes on the tops of pieces especially. You can see an enormous amount of damage can be done to a piece that's still considered to be in really great shape if it's been used for years and years. Wood gets dents and dings in it. Another option would be to replace the tops of those furniture pieces. Another option would be to just sit and think about it before we go on to tan washing wood. On this piece or these pieces, what I decided to do was sand down the tops. By the way, all of the shown parts on these nightstands is mahogany. Everything that you can see is mahogany. And if I had more time or if I had more time, which means money, to have done so, I would have removed the paint and the stain from as much of it as I could. But To make a tan wash, you use 1 part paint that's tan and 1 part water to start with. I instantly decided that for me that was too thick, and so I added another third of water. So for me, this wash was 1 part tan paint and 2 parts water. You find what works for you and the speed at which you go. Start slowly before you go too far, because it's easier not to have to remove any of it than it is to feel like you need to add more. Similar to a haircut, you cannot go back in a lot of ways, but of course you can, it's just more challenging. So start off, the side of caution you want to be on is not adding enough paint wash. You can see here the major color change that's taking place because mahogany has so much red in it, is why I chose to do a tan wash to make it match the rest of the piece more than it does as is. You can apply the wash in whatever fashion you want, really. You can use a foam brush, you could use a sponge, you could use a paper towel, and you let it sit for as long as you like. I'm not letting mine sit for very long at all. How long it's going to need to sit will depend on too many circumstances for me to give you any solid advice on how to do that. It's why I say err on the side of caution where you're not putting enough, because after I remove the excess, after I've waited a little bit and I allow the top to dry, I'll be able to determine if I want to add more of the wash. In my case, I will do another coat of the wash before I go to a top coat. How much of a major change a tan wash can make on wood like mahogany is very obvious in this video, and you can see that it's not too hard to do, and it has become common practice among a lot of people that refinish furniture because mahogany is so beautiful, but we don't import it anymore. It's one of the few opportunities that we're going to have for as long as we know to see mahogany is to see it by refinishing old furniture. The next steps that you see me taking there is I'm sanding down the lines in between where the tape was, not strictly necessary, but it's going to give it a smoother feel and slightly better look. I'm also doing literal touch-ups with my fingers, and at the cross grain you can see the tan wash took much better. I decided it's time to put these together just to get a visual on what it's going to look like before I apply my top coat. My top coat choice for these is going to be a water-based polyurethane. Water-based polyurethane typically is my choice for a top coat. It's easy to work with. It dries quickly. It is water-based, so the cleanup doesn't need to involve mineral spirits, but I will say that it will ruin a brush, so I use a foam applicator that I'm able to just then throw away. And water-based polyurethane also has very low VOCs. One of the reasons I choose it over polyacrylic, which you will see plenty of people using polyacrylic, is that polyacrylic can be more brittle. Everything has advantages and disadvantages, so that's not me ragging on polyacrylic entirely, but it may not be for everyone. One of the more common top coats is oil-based polyurethane, or I should say one of the more well-known top coats. It's not as often used as it once was for a couple of reasons. First of all, the environment doesn't like oil-based products as much, and they're harder to work with. The chemicals and fumes create a challenge. And two, they yellow over time. So on darker material, there you see that's wet. That's what it would look like if I top coated it right then. And I do not believe that that has enough of the red taken out of it. So I'm going in to do another wash with the tan paint and 2 parts water. General Finishes top coat is award-winning and incredibly durable. It's also particularly expensive. There are a lot of furniture waxes that go on after chalk often that create a depth that's quite beautiful, and those can also be fairly expensive. And one of my favorite options is Deft Clear Wood Finish. The thing to be considered for you, if you want to do something like this, is how much product do you really need. If you're not going to be doing a whole lot of projects, then going for general finishes or going for a wax is going to cost you quite a bit of money. But you can get a small container of water-based polyurethane or water-based polyacrylic at a fairly affordable price compared to the other options. You can also get a spray-on. Deft Clear Wood Spray is what I use and love. You can get water-based polyurethane in a spray. There are a number of options. All of them have their advantages and disadvantages. I don't want you to feel any pressure at all. This is free content on a very new channel. I love flipping furniture. I want to do so more creatively and spend more of my time doing it. I also love teaching others how to do it, but that has a cost, and my funds are not unlimited, where I'm going to need to make a profit to keep creating content. If you would like to give me $1, I would like to accept $1. And if you don't have that, don't worry about it. Just keep watching. The pieces have the final look that I'm going for after having put them together, just to get a view of that. I'm very pleased with them. How much time it took is incredible. I doubt I'm going to make minimum wage if I sell this for a pretty high price. One of the drawers I had put wood putty on because it had some minor damage. I'm now using a furniture marker just to cover that up and camouflage it. If you want to camouflage something, go darker rather than lighter, because light is what attracts the eye. So that would be the side of caution you err on. Here I'm using water-based polyurethane that I poured into a separate container to make sure that I'm not contaminating my polyurethane can. Back to a little bit more about paint. I want to talk about where we fail with paint, or where paint fails with us. The main reason for a failure um, is us. It's probably not the paint very often. So dilution is one issue that paint faces. It's when someone puts too much water in and it goes against the manufacturer's recommendation. The over dilution or using something that you're not supposed to dilute it with can be a problem. One of the other issues is contamination. Foreign contaminants can cause some defects within the paint, and it's why straining is good. It's why trying to have a room that you don't sand in be the same room that you paint in. That's a big ask, but the contamination issue, getting schmutz, is, as I call it, is a pretty big issue that you just keep an eye on it as you're going through and while it's still drying. Since we use water-based so often, that makes it less of an issue. Oil-based would pull things in all day. Peeling or blistering is usually due to improper surface treatment before the application, and it has something to do with how much moisture is in the substrate, so whatever is beneath that paint if it gets too wet. And chalking is where there's a powder on the surface. It's usually because of it being in the sun, so you'll see that chalking happen outside fairly often. I'm going to add in the video here a little bit more of that paint using just the rag to do a paint wash. You can see the side by side there. They're not quite matching, but I get them to a point where they match very, very well. And I am incredibly pleased with how these turned out. Adding on another coat of water-based polyurethane here. I may go back with the general finishes for that incredible durability. I have put enough water-based polyurethane on these pieces by the time of this recording that it would be overkill, but I love them so much. Thank you for watching. Please click like or subscribe, and check out the final product here. It's really so beautiful, and the changes that were made were a lot of effort, a lot of thought and time went into this project. I love them so very much. I welcome any feedback that you have for me, any corrections on things I've said, any subscription you would like to click on, or send me $1, also cool. But look at that mahogany. What a beautiful, beautiful thing. I couldn't be more pleased. I think these are two of I know these are two of my favorite pieces yet. Mahogany was also in one of my other two favorite pieces. I think it's likely the next mahogany piece I'm going to get, I'm going to try to stay with the red hues. A before and after here is shown again so you can see the giant contrast. Also, I went on vacation. Here's some cats sitting in a potted plant. That seemed like it was noteworthy enough, except then I saw this really pregnant goat and wanted to point that out. I'm going to show you another picture of these side tables. Love them. What's coming up next is really exciting for me. I got 8 nightstands to try to flip in a bit of an assembly line fashion. I'll be funning around and finding out. Come join me.